I am the director of the Leonard P. Zakim Center for Integrative Therapies here at Dana-Farber. And on behalf of myself and all of our Dana-Farber Zakim Center staff, I'd really like to welcome you here tonight for our annual Lenny lecture. Before we get started, so I don't forget, I'm going to read a few housekeeping details. In case of an emergency, the exits are located across the hall from the conference center and to the right, following the exit signs to adjacent buildings. Hopefully it will not come to this. Restrooms are located outside of the conference center through that door and straight through. And if you parked in the Smith garage, please make sure to pick up a parking sticker at the table in the gallery. Your parking will be validated if this sticker is on your parking ticket. All right, so that is it for the official introduction. So we are so excited to have you all here tonight. As most of you in this room know, the Zakim Center here at Dana-Farber is really committed to providing integrative services to our patients, to their family members and caregivers, and to our staff, and also to doing research and to educating people about the value of integrative therapies in the treatment of patients with cancer. And I think the last few years have really marked an exciting time in the study of integrative therapies, and we've had a lot of really exciting new data from research studies showing really how much difference things like acupuncture and meditation and yoga and exercise can mean for somebody who is struggling with the side effects and symptoms of cancer therapy. The Lenny Lecture has really been the centerpiece of our educational program. We really want to teach people about how integrative therapies can be helpful during cancer treatment. Last year, we took a new form for the Lenny Lecture. In the past, we really had focused on the science, which as a scientist I always think is exciting, but sharing research studies and having people learn a little bit about how integrative therapies can be helpful in lessening things like fatigue and pain and the things that patients often experience as a result of cancer treatments. Last year, we took a different approach, and we brought in an individual who had used integrative therapies to overcome a challenge in his life. And I will say that we received so many positive comments from people about really seeing through another person's eyes how integrative therapies helped him to overcome challenges, and really felt for the first time like they could see how integrative therapies could be useful to them. And so this year we decided that what we really wanted was for somebody who had used integrative therapies as a key part of their cancer treatment to share with all of you that experience, to see how integrative therapies were really an essential part of cancer treatment. And so I'm so excited this evening to have Karen Lee Sobol join us. Karen Lee has been a lot of things in her life: an architect, an artist, an advocate for Dana-Farber, and a patient here, who was treated for a fairly unusual malignancy called Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia, which is something that many of you may never have heard of before. And it was a cancer that there wasn't a lot of understanding of even 10 years ago. Karen Lee was treated on a clinical trial with medicines that unfortunately had a lot of side effects. But Karen Lee was able to use integrative therapies to help her get through this period of her life, and she wrote a book about this called 12 Weeks, really talking about how her art and integrative therapies played a critical role in the experience that she had in treating and surviving her cancer. Karen Lee has really become an advocate for patients with Waldenstrom's. She's worked very closely with Dr. Steve Treon of our Bing Center for Waldenstrom's here, talking to patients about her experience and really helping inspire people in their own cancer journeys. And so we're so excited this evening that Karen Lee is going to share her story with us and hopefully inspire all of us about the power of these therapies in your lives. So thank you very much.
Dr. Lidabelle, thank you. Thank you all for being here. I feel so beautifully embraced and supported by our gifted Zakim Center team and our very talented Dana-Farber team. And I aim to extend and share this embrace and this support tonight with each of you. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of my experiences, and I really look forward to hearing some of yours. I invite each and all of you to join us in this conversation this evening. We're here together to celebrate mind, body, and spirit, and also to build bridges from cancer to healing and hope. That sounds like a very busy evening. So let's put on our imaginary party hats and our imaginary hard hats, and let's explore together the art of healing and the art of hope. When I checked the dictionary definition of bridge, here's what came up. A physical thing that connects two other physical things. Let's challenge that. As I tell you about some of my experiences in the world of cancer and the world of integrative medicine, I'd like you to think about and maybe even visualize each person, each place, each feeling, each action, each thought, each emotion, as if it were a bridge, because for me, each of them is. I'll introduce you to what combination of modern Western medicine and age-old holistic healing techniques worked for me, when each was appropriate for me, how I use them, and why I believe they worked. We'll have a bit of a world tour as we take a look at herbs from China, singing bowls from Tibet, Reiki from Japan, and a meditation, a combination of age-old techniques and New Age techniques that I kind of made up as I went along. And of course, we'll have a look at high-tech Western medicine right here at Dana-Farber. Oh, and to mind, body, and spirit, let's add heart, because empathy and compassion matter, both for each other and for ourselves. Lenny Zakim believed in a better future. Although he and I never met, we share many common bonds. We're both from New Jersey. We both like to host Passover Seders with a big group of people from all kinds of backgrounds. We both had blood cancers. We both sought medical treatment at Dana-Farber. And both Lenny and I knew that we needed something else. We needed more to help support us get through our medical situation. So each of us in our own ways found people and techniques to help ease our pain and help us hold it together. Lenny traveled outside of Dana-Farber to find people trained in traditional Eastern healing techniques. By the time I got to Dana-Farber, thanks to Lenny's legacy, the Zakim Center for Integrative Medicine was well established and housed in the Dana building right across the street. In the Dana building, I walked right past the Zakim Center 39 times when I went to get my medical treatment, but I never once went in. For me, then, healing was a private affair. Lenny was a creative force, so let's start by looking at creativity. Medicine, like art, is a creative process. Healing, like hope, is also a creative process. So what does the creative process entail? Well, it's an action or series of actions. It may be physical and visible, or internal and invisible. The results may be tangible or intangible. Sometimes the creative process is private. Sometimes it's a team effort, a collaboration. Since there's rarely a linear path from a problem to a solution, the creative process requires paying attention, and it requires taking some risks. It always takes time. A painter might start with a blank canvas. A scientist might start with an empty test tube. They're not really sure how they're going to get to the result that they want. The creative process, though, is always a combination of what we think and what we do. And each of us, in every choice we make, engages the creative process. For me, as I engage with cancer, healing, and hope, my thoughts and feelings evolved over time, and my thoughts generated actions and results. So briefly, here's my story. Probably all of us know that receiving a cancer diagnosis is horrifying. It's a shock to the person hearing it. It's a shock to the family. It's a shock to your friends. Your world is really shaken. In the winter of 2005, we learned that I had Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. It's a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. And this disease was defined as rare and incurable. Poison was surging through my blood. In the studio, my work entered new territory. My palette changed, and so did my physical actions. I started flinging paint. I started working fast and furiously, and actually pretty violently. Making things, sketches, paintings, sculptures, collages, helped me to face first the terror of cancer, and later helped me to expel the trauma of treatment. Making art provided me with a means to channel outrageous anxieties and to express emotions that are so potent words can't form. In the cancer hospital, I felt isolated and I felt alone. And then, during the first bone marrow biopsy, I had a bizarre and great experience. Old meditation techniques kicked in, and I just slowed down my breathing, which helped me deal with the terror. By breathing slowly, I also calmed my body, my mind, and my heart rate. But I still didn't want to be here. And I was terrified. My mantra was, make this go away. And for 6 weeks, I lived in gloom and doom. Then some very special people entered the picture, and hope started to enter the picture. My friend Sherry said to me, when you're drowning in quicksand, reach for a different branch. Well, 2 very talented doctors appeared as different branches. My husband, Bill, found Dr. Stephen Treon, the world's expert in the disease I had, right here at Dana-Farber. And my adopted Chinese grandmother, Ma Ting, found Dr. George Wang, a Chinese herbal medicine doctor in New York City. So, feeling lousy, I got on the train, I went to New York, and by appointment, I met with Dr. George Wang. Dr. Wang told me he couldn't cure the cancer, but until I needed treatment, he thought that his herbs could help me feel better, which they did. By chance, I also met one of Dr. Wang's colleagues, Helen Marks. Helen introduced me to the concept of experimental medicine, aggressive treatment. Well, on the train ride back to Boston, I experienced a seismic shift in my attitude and a mental transition from terror to hope. I started to really listen to myself, and I started to really trust myself. I knew that I was never going to be stronger than I was right now before receiving any treatment, even though I did have this disease. So I thought, why not try to go for something aggressive? Why not be a lab rat? Best case, I get better, medical science benefits. Worst case, I don't get better, and medical science still benefits. And when I came home, Bill and I both have backgrounds in architecture. When I came home, I said to my husband, from now on, you and I run this project. So after I met Dr. Wang, but before I met Dr. Treon, I had the opportunity to be at a place which is very special for me, the ocean. And here, for the first time, with the surf kind of drowning out my own voice, I said aloud, the disease I had, and I also said aloud what I wanted, which was to be cancer-free and healthy. I was really facing the terror I'd been feeling by naming it. Hearing myself say that made my body feel better. In the spring, Bill and I came here to meet Dr. Treon, and I had two goals for this first meeting. The first was I wanted this doctor to see me as a person first, and then as a patient, which is absolutely what he does. And the second goal was to just start to talk about whether there might be some options for me in the future. I felt really safe in Dr. Treon's care, but there's no question I was under the microscope and I was in the spotlight. Now, because Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia can develop, as you said, Dr. Ligabell, very, very slowly, the prevailing philosophy with it is watch and wait. Just don't treat unless the person becomes sick enough that the disease is life-threatening, which we did through the summer. We waited, and Dr. Treon watched. And in that interim, two other doctors had a very significant influence on me. I saw a book review. The book was called The Anatomy of Hope. The author is Dr. Jerome Groopman, who's a Boston-based doctor. Dr. Groopman's areas of concentration are leukemia, lymphoma, breast cancer, and AIDS. And I want to read to you a quote from his book. Speaking of the biology of hope, belief and expectation, the key elements of hope, can block pain by releasing the brain's endorphins and enkephalins, mimicking the effects of morphine. In some cases, hope can have important effects on fundamental physiological processes, like respiration, circulation, and motor function. In his experience, people with hope fared better, felt better, and lived longer. From Dr. Groopman's words, I formulated my favorite equation ever. Hope equals belief plus expectation. The second doctor whose words helped me so is a family friend, Dr. Ralph Iannuzzi. Ralph is an otolaryngologist, which means he's an ear, nose, and throat guy. And in the course of his practice, he sees many, many, many people with cancer. He told me that sometimes a person's data will look pretty dismal, but patients surprise him. People who have friends to support them, family behind them, social connections, people who are kind of tied in with life and living, in his experience, could do very, very well and live very, very long and happy lives despite what their medical profile looked like. And then he said, it's the intangibles, the things we can't see, but they're out there. So even though my body was numb at this point with cancer, my mind was at peace. So in the fall of 2005, the creative process got personal for us. The disease had progressed, and Dr. Treon told us it was time to act and it was time to get some treatment. Part of taking the creative route had been searching out the doctor who could give us options, but now we had to make a decision, which was, were we willing to experiment with my life? After we asked a zillion questions and learned all that we could from my doctor and from Zachary Hunter about the risks versus the benefits, we made a decision, the decision was that I would enter a clinical trial with a biology-based drug. The science behind the drug seemed to make sense, and so did the calendar. 12 weeks. In 12 weeks, we would be through with this. Intuition said yes, and I enrolled in the clinical trial. So with information and meditation, I felt calm and I felt ready. But in spite of all my mental preparation, day one was a shock. In this creative process, I became both the blank canvas and the test tube. Mindfulness took on new meaning. We've all heard that expression, one day at a time. For me, it became literally one moment at a time. That was the way I was able to get through what I needed to get through each day. So in one way, my mind, body, and spirit were functioning a little bit independently, but in another way, they were functioning very much together. In Dana 1, where, as I mentioned, I had my treatment, I discovered early on that I was compelled to walk. I needed to move. So for hours and hours, I did as I was receiving my drug. And as my IV pole and I walked up and down the cancer ward every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday for 12 weeks, incredible people were there to teach me and help me and support me. And I'd like to tell you just two quick stories about two of my nurses. I'll call the first nurse Laura. We were 2.5 weeks in, and Laura observed that I looked tired. So she asked if I had been sleeping, and the answer was no. And looking at me very sternly and saying very clearly, you need to have nutrition, hydration, and rest, really made an impression. And from then on, and continuing now to the best of my ability, nutrition, hydration, and rest are a mantra for me. The second nurse I'll call Rosemary, and the conversation I'm going to relay happened at the start of week 3. Rosemary happened to have a few moments in between caring for her patients as I approached her on my daily promenade, and we had a little talk. And she started by telling me that she practices Hinduism. And then I want to read to you from the notes that I wrote down after we had this conversation. Rosemary, 17 October 2005. Hindus believe in the power and influence of the mind. Have to visualize the full process. See the campath, that's the drug I was receiving, going to the cancer. See it destroying cancer. See body cancer-free. See body rebuilding, healing, healthy. It's okay, she said. In fact, it's necessary to admit the negative. Part of the process, a normal part. And it's not natural to not allow it in. Being happy all the time is manic. It causes disease. When I went back to my chair and wrote these notes, at the bottom of the notes I drew a heart and I wrote, "Thank you, Rosemary." And I believe this was the turning point where my meditations now incorporated a mental movie, because I saw in my mind that drug entering, making a beeline for those tumor cells and exploding them till there weren't any left. So, mind, body, spirit, heart, medicine. There was a lot of external work going on, and there was also a lot of internal work going on. I held a vision of being cancer-free, and most lucky for me, my family, my friends, my medical team allowed me to hold on to that dream. During the 12 weeks, I learned that when anybody experiences success, everybody feels hope. And I learned that even while we're sick, we can be healing. So we got through the 12 weeks, and that brings us to the winter of 2006. I was exhausted, and I was weak. I believe there was a rainbow somewhere, but a faint sign of disease still remained. And this is where the expressive art of music and the healing art of Reiki enter the picture. I read an interview in the Styles section, not the science section, of the New York Times with an oncologist named Mitchell Gaynor. Early in his career, Dr. Gaynor had had a Tibetan monk as a patient. The Tibetan monk had introduced him to singing bowls. And Dr. Gaynor saw that if you played the singing bowls for patients, their anxieties eased, and in some cases, like Dr. Iannuzzi's intangibles, they outlived their prognosis ongoing. So I thought, this sounds interesting. Maybe I should give this a try. I got some bowls, and here's where my meditation gets musical. Playing the singing bowls in combination with meditating and also vocalizing, using my own voice, making sounds come out of me, was the combination that was recommended, and that's the combination I did almost every day for 4 months. And it was very, again, focused and concentrated because I always started with my intention, what my goal was. And at this point, my father, who at the time was 90, said to me, "The mind influences the chemistry of the body." In the spring, 4 months after the clinical trial was over, we saw the disease go to 0. And no one really knows why the drug worked. My family, my friends, my medical team, all of us were, of course, ecstatic, but I was still weak and I was still exhausted. Bill introduced me to Judy Piani, a Reiki master who practices the age-old Japanese art of Reiki energy healing. It was time now to rebuild and to heal, and in time, thanks to Judy and Reiki, I did. And through it all, meditation was an anchor. It changed, it evolved, it started to incorporate different things. It grew to include many, many, many people who were my support system, whether they were physically present or not. In the fall of 2006, this question came to my mind: why am I still here? And the answer followed immediately. And the answer was, write a book and try to have my experience be useful to other people. And the result, as you mentioned, Dr. Ligabell, was 12 weeks, an artist's story of cancer, healing, and hope. And I can assure you that writing a book is a creative process of its own. So let's revisit the concept of rare and incurable. And let's have a look at the progress in Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia since I was a patient, and the progress in multiple myeloma since Lenny was a patient. As for Waldenstrom's, in the past few years, my doctor and his team have made fantastic breakthroughs, both in understanding the disease and then in generating new treatments to address it. For some patients now, instead of having to go to the infusion room, they can stay home and take a pill. And that pill will manage and control their disease so that they can have a really full life. We hold on to the hope of cure, but in the meantime, we have curability. And here's an example. 8 years ago, a 92-year-old woman came to my doctor with the same disease I had. So he treated her, and guess what? She is about to celebrate her 100th birthday. So let's come back to Lenny. If Lenny were a Dana-Farber patient today with multiple myeloma, he would find many more bridges available to him. He'd find treatment options that help manage and control multiple myeloma, many of them developed by Dr. Ken Anderson and his team. Dr. Ken Anderson was Lenny's doctor and a huge supporter of the Zakim Center, of course. And Joyce, with my thanks to you, I want to tell you a little bit about an email conversation Dr. Anderson and I had. I asked Dr. Anderson, when you first began to examine this disease, I heard you looked at it differently and asked a different kind of question than physicians and scientists had been asking up to that point. And here's Dr. Anderson's answer. Myeloma represents a model of developing treatments, not only directly targeting the tumor cell, but also in targeting those factors in the bone marrow microenvironment that promote its growth, survival, and resistance to treatment. To which I responded, your fresh viewpoint paved the way for previously undreamed of breakthroughs. I recall your query had something to do with looking at the bigger picture. Dr. Anderson's response, you are right on. So there's a philosophical truth here, which is when you look at things differently, the things you look at change. Looking at things differently was, I believe, one of Lenny's many gifts. I asked Dr. Anderson, did you know Lenny Zakim, and if you did, was he your patient? Dr. Anderson replied, yes, I had the privilege for caring for Lenny, who quickly became my hero and friend. The Zakim Center is a direct result of his desire to allow patients to be proactive in their care. Dr. Trion told me Lenny was an inspiring figure and wanted to promote a world that cared for one another. So this brings us full circle to the power our minds and our thoughts exert on our bodies, our spirits, and our hearts, and the power of the creative process. Because of his creative vision and his care for others, now, right here at Dana-Farber, Lenny would find many bridges connecting high-tech Western science and medicine with age-old holistic healing techniques. He would meet our talented, dedicated staff who help patients manage pain, alleviate anxiety, and enjoy a better quality of life. Right here, Lenny would find the integrative medicine that he valued so deeply, and I believe his heart would be happy. Together, we're building a new bridge, the new Zakim Center, and it's opening soon. Where? Right across the street in Dana 1, the place where I received my treatment and where I meditated and walked past the Zakim Center front door 39 times, where my family, my doctor, my nurses, the friends cared for me, protected me, and encouraged me. So I challenge the dictionary definition of a bridge as something that makes a physical connection between two things. I believe there are many paths to wellness, and I believe that our open hearts and our open minds inspire each other and help save lives. Our collaboration and cooperation improve people's health and lives, and together we create a rainbow of bridges. Lenny believed in a better future, and the future for cancer care and cure looks brighter and brighter. My creativity helps save my sanity. Lenny's creativity helps save souls. My doctor likes to quote the Talmud. He or she who saves one life is to be regarded as someone who has saved the whole world. Lenny's spirit and his legacy stay with us. Each of us in our own way can be a bridge from cancer to healing and to hope. So wearing our imaginary hard hats and our imaginary party hats. Let's celebrate together, mind, body, spirit, and heart. Thank you, and l'chaim. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karen Lee. That was very inspiring. I think hearing your journey and the many ways that integrative therapies helped you, I think, is really a message for all of us and our people that are dealing with cancer, people that are not. We all have struggles in our lives, and I think that's just incredible to hear all the different ways that these therapies helped you. We would love to answer any questions people might have. Karen Lee has generously agreed to have a conversation, an open conversation. We also will have less formal, if people don't feel comfortable asking questions in the group. Karen Lee has also donated her book so that everyone here can learn a little bit more about her art and her journey. So please, if you have questions, we'd love to have a little bit of a conversation about how integrative therapies have helped you, or questions you may have for Karen Lee about her journey or treatment. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question, Ms. Sobol, and thank you very much for sharing. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience with the Chinese herbs, specifically, what symptoms you were experiencing and how that eased your symptoms.
What Dr. Wong told me was that the herbs could build up my immune system before I had chemotherapy. I want to be really clear that I stopped taking the herbs before I started any kind of medicine. Honestly, I think the way they helped me was psychological, because every morning and every evening I would heat up this little package of herbs and I would hold them like a treasure and I would drink them. But I was pretty sick. I don't really think there was a physical result, but there was a tremendous psychological result. And actually, we have two people here who are trained as professionals using Chinese herbs. So I wonder, Wei Dong and Pam, would you like to add to this? Please.
I would defer to Dr.
Oh. Wei Dong?
Yeah, I think sometimes herbs would help people with some mostly physical strength. As you say, the psychological definitely is an important part. But the important is that we also be aware that you may use it before or after your chemotherapy, so you don't have a conflict to each other. So that's very important to avoid the contraindication that may affect you negatively. So that's why you use it wisely. That may help in some way. Mostly for the energy boost, feel you stronger and reduce some side effects. So that's but another side is that herbs are not easy to take. As you said, how will it taste?
I didn't care. If it was going to help me, I didn't care. And it didn't look good either.
Yeah, they don't look good. They look very muddy,
Yeah.
earthy, and sometimes they look very weird. That's true. That's true. It's kind of weird thing to do, but in Asia, that's a tradition. A lot of people do it. So we need to do a lot of study on this, if it's possible, to really find if there's truly that there's some kind of scientific base there. That's what we need to do more science.
Thank you.
Is this something that's offered to the Zakim?
No, we not offer this because the herbs are much more complicated issue. There's very little study on this, so it takes a lot of effort to go and to tease things out to understand better. So I think there's something there, but we need a lot of work to do.
So Ann Kelly, who's here.
Ann's here tonight.
Yeah.
So Ann Kelly is our integrative medicine provider, and Ann works with our patients. Many people come in with a lot of herbs that they're interested in taking, and Ann works with them to go through lists and review what evidence there is regarding various herbs, and also to really look at what interacts with different Weidonglu is the head of our oncology acupuncture program. So there's a lot that we know about interactions between herbs with various cancer treatments. And many patients will take medicines for years after their cancer diagnosis. And we want to make sure that anything that our patients are taking doesn't have an adverse effect or something unexpected in combination with their cancer therapy. So Anne works very closely with patients to look at herbs that they're interested in taking and looking at nutritional supplements as well. We're very interested in nutrition and how what we ingest in our bodies affects. Apparently talked a little bit about what's around the tumor, in this case the bone marrow microenvironment, and we've learned so much more about the interaction between our own bodies and tumors, and we recognize that cancer doesn't grow in a vacuum, it grows in a person, and we have an ability to have some impact on what's around the tumor in terms of the exercise we're doing, in our nutrition, and other therapies that may make bodies more or less resistant to what's going on in the tumor. So we're very interested in helping people think about their nutrition and their lifestyle and how that can affect cancer risk and what happens after cancer's developed.
And let's just pick up on exercise, because I feel that one of the things that was really crucial that helped me is the fact that I had been very physically active basically my whole life. I still have never owned a car in my own name, and I swim usually 5 days a week. And I feel like that's part of why my body was strong when I had this horrible disease. And as I was mentioning earlier, Dr. Treon now, for the past several years, has an additional category that he uses to evaluate a patient and what treatment might be appropriate for that patient. And the category is fit. How fit is this person? Can this person's body handle different levels of drugs? So I guess my point is, please, everyone, Ellen Comerford, my amazing gyrotonic teacher who literally helped me rebuild my body and gave me power, physical powers in my body I never dreamed I could have. Ellen, you say sitting is the new smoking. So,
I'm sitting here.
thank you. I know it's a sacrifice, but I appreciate it. But if we think about it, we're at computers, we're in cars, we're at the television. I would just implore you, the more you can move around, please do.
I think that's one of the things we're very excited about, and Karen Lee talked a little bit about the Zakim Center's new physical space. So for many years, the Zakim Center has moved around from place to place, always sharing space with our clinical departments, which has been wonderful to have that partnership, but we've grown over the years. And in the next few months, we will be moving into a new center that is connected across the bridge, across the street, that is still part of Dana-Farber, but will be our own physical space. And for the first time, we will have a group exercise space and a gym. And we'll really be able to, we've over the years been working with people all through their cancer treatment and beyond to build strength, to build resiliency. And we'll really have, for the first time, a physical space where we can help people become stronger. Because I think that we recognize, I'm an oncologist, and I know that a lot of the treatments that I use to cure people and to help keep their cancer under control can also have significant adverse impact on strength and their people's ability to function in their daily lives. And so we're very excited to have this opportunity to expand our ability to keep people strong and to help build back strength all throughout the cancer journey. So stay tuned. We will hopefully be providing some pictures and updates of the new space soon, and we'll be opening in 2017.
One of the many brilliant and beautiful insights you shared during your talk was that you learned how to trust yourself and trust your intuition in making some of these decisions to integrate alternative therapies and also to become a participant in a clinical trial. Can you talk a little bit about what you would share with other patients who are dealing with the challenge of a lot of scientific information that they may or may not fully be able to understand, and also, on the other hand, dealing with their own intuitions and needs as a human being. And can you sort of share a little bit more about how you balanced those things as you grew to understand more about the science and also about the alternatives at your disposal?
Great question. I'm going to start at the end, and then I'll come back. My mother was a doctor. She practiced OBGYN. And once we knew that I needed to have treatment, and we already had Dr. Treon, I said, Ma, what can you tell me? What advice do you want to give me? And she said, 3 words, trust your doctor. Backing up, though, you know, Bina, sometimes other people don't believe we're sick. I mean, if anybody had looked at me, I looked pretty good, but my knees weren't working. I couldn't walk. I found I couldn't think. I stood in front of my locker at the YWCA in Chinatown, and I couldn't remember the combination because of the problems going on with my blood. And you have to be a little bit of a detective. I mean, you have to just keep finding a doctor until somebody listens to you, which can be exhausting. And then once an oncologist helped to figure out the diagnosis and figured out that I did have cancer, I was told what was now going to happen to me. When a certain number went from this to this, treatment was going to start. That treatment was going to be a combination of really cytotoxic, really toxic drugs. And I tried to say, well, can you tell me a little bit about them? And the answer was no. When the time comes, you know, maybe I will. And I just thought, I can't be treated like this. And I'm a person who, you know, has up until this point been really happy to kind of, you know, easily go along with the flow. And if somebody, you know, set a standard, you know, I might accept it. So that was the first intuition, just hearing this list of drugs and feeling in my gut, these will kill me. So that's part of it. And I think that you do kind of have to, in a way, be creative and just see, you know, see who is out there who might be able to help in the situation. And I know from experiences with friends and with family that, for example, living with chronic pain is just a horrible way to live. And it takes energy to keep yourself going, to keep searching, to keep trying to figure out what sounds right, what feels right for you. And I think the instinct is really, you're always going to know what the right answer is, even though that might be scary. Is that helpful or confusing?
No. You have to trust your doctors and trust your gut.
Yes, that's right. That's a very good short answer. Yes?
How, a lot of integrated therapies through your cancer experience, how do you feel that all of these things kind of changed your art from, you were obviously productive artist before all of this, and you portrayed some very beautiful images about how the therapy made you feel at different times. So how do you feel that coming through this experience changed your creative process so that the end of all of this?
That's such a great question. Well, one of the things, an expression I used to use in the studio when I just was like frustrated and I didn't want to set goals and I just wanted to I just couldn't keep living up to my own expectations, was free fall. Just going to go into free fall. Whatever happens, happens. And often the best work happened. And I feel like entering the clinical trial was very much like free fall because we didn't know which way gravity was going to go. But I feel the way it's changed my work now is, in a way, I'm more in touch with how I used to paint when I was in my 20s. And I'm more in touch with the artists that I loved when I was in my 20s. And I feel like I went through a long calligraphic path where things were more linear and fewer colors were used. An explosion of color happened once I knew how sick I was, and now we're coming back to more form. But, you know, it evolves.
Any other questions? Anyone?
All right, if not, I would like to. Where?
It's no in the back.
Are you hiding things on me? That makes it complicated. All right. Well, we are so appreciative of Karen Lee's time. Really find such an inspiration to hear about how integrative therapies can really be a guiding post through a very difficult time. And so we really thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Really wonderful. You're awesome. And I know not everybody feels comfortable asking questions in front of a big group. So Karen Lee has been very kind, like I said, to donate books. We'll be sitting out in the back. We have refreshments. So please feel free to mingle. Ask Karen Lee all the questions you don't want to ask in front of the group. And I really hope that you all enjoyed the evening. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you. Sorry. And I also wanted to thank Megan McLaughlin, Victoria Kennedy, Jamie, and all of the Zakim Center staff who worked very hard to support this event today, as well as our integrative therapy fair that our patients